History repeats itself, and this is seen with trends of anti-Semitism in both Germany and the US. Anti-Semitism is the second most common motivation for hate crime in Germany, second only to racially motivated attacks. There were 2,400 instances of anti-Semitic attacks in 2020 compared to 9,400 racially motivated attacks in Germany in 2020. This has been a growing trend, as there were only 273 reported anti-Semitic instances in 2019. Part of this is due to a legitimate growing incidence of anti-Semitism in the country. However, some of it is due to a growing willingness and awareness of law enforcement to recognize certain attacks as racially motivated or ethnically motivated. Another shocking statistic is that anti-Semitism is the most common motivation for attacks on property in Germany among all the hate crimes. There were 300 anti-Semitic attacks on property in 2020 compared to only 23 racially motivated attacks on property. All of this information is collected by and stored by the Office of Democratic Institutions and Human Rights from the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe. These specific attacks on property that are unique to anti-Semitism are due to the language and rhetoric that has been repeated in stories regarding the Jewish people for centuries.
Old prints showed that Jews were viewed as different, or that they were hated even. Christians did not like that the Jews had a different religion, and that they did not see Jesus as their Saviour and the Son of God. Some Christians even saw Jews as the people who murdered Jesus. Jews also had different customs. That is why Jews were often discriminated against, and many professions were prohibited to Jews, but they were allowed to work in trade and finance. The negative image of Jews continued to exist beyond the Middle Ages. When a country was not doing well, negative stories about Jews started to appear. They were excluded and even persecuted. Because a small but visible group of Jews was working in trade or finance, they were accused of being power-hungry, causing all kinds of ghost stories about Jews to appear. These stories were handed down from generation to generation and became deeply rooted. During the 20s and 30s of the 20th century, Hitler and the Nazis used these old ghost stories. They made Jews into scapegoats. For example, Hitler accused Jews of being the cause of the economic crisis. Losing World War I was also their fault, according to Hitler. Hitler and the Nazis saw the world as a struggle between the human races. More and more people started to believe that Jews caused problems and that the Germanic people were better.
Wenn es dem internationalen Finanzjudentum in und außerhalb Europas gelingen sollte, die Folge noch einmal in einen Weltkrieg zu stürzen, dann wird das Ergebnis nicht die Bolschewisierung der Erde und damit das Sieg des Judentums sein, sondern die Vernichtung der jüdischen Rasse in Europa.
In 1933, Hitler and the Nazis came to power.
Modern anti-Semitism is influenced by its origins. The belief of a global Jewish financial elite with immense control over the rest of the world is still a common myth that is believed by many across the world today. And anti-Semitic attacks on property serve to combat this perceived control that some people believe, even though it's false. And although anti-Semitism is almost as old as humanity itself, it's not going away. It's growing more powerful and more dangerous by the day. Since the Jewish people are a small minority in many countries around the world, they are always one step away from being cast in the role as scapegoats whenever a country starts to go into an economic crisis. In the US, younger generations have either forgotten or are wholly unaware of the dangers and prevalence of anti-Semitism. According to the American Jewish Council, over 50% of respondents to a poll over the age of 65 are aware and believe that anti-Semitic attacks have been on the rise for the last 5 years. This is compared to only 30% of respondents under the age of 35 that believe the same thing. And with increasing prevalence of anti-Semitism, it is important to understand and debunk the myths and stories that have been told about the Jewish people for centuries, so that we don't fall into the same situation and mistakes that we've seen in 1930s Germany.